something going on. There's something in the wind, and we're trying to figure out what it is. All I can do is report to you the news, go back through history, try to help you understand. A wise man, a prudent man sees danger and takes refuge, but a fool ignores it and suffers for it, right? So we're trying to be wise. We're trying to understand what's happening, what's going on. The Bible also, is very specific in Revelation chapter 1, that those who seek to understand that book, that there's a special blessing that comes to those who seek to understand that book. And so, again, part of understanding that book means we have to understand the times and what's going on. So, again, that's what we're trying to do. That Pope Francis is asking the Catholic churches to turn in their money to the Vatican by October 1st. Now, why is that? Now, I don't know why. Now, I can give you some speculation, and I'm going to go through some stuff because in some of my books, I have warned about the Vatican's push toward globalism. I can promise you this. The Vatican is fully on board with the New World Order. Their words, not mine. All you have to do is go back to the encyclicals of Pope Francis, Pope Benedict, and they openly are calling for a new world order. They're calling for a world political authority with teeth. A world political authority with teeth. That's what they're calling for. They're calling for a central bank, a world central bank. Well, what is the world central bank these guys pushing for? They're pushing for a global currency. They're pushing for the digital dollar, right? The digital dollar. I can promise you the Vatican is on board with all of this. They're on board with all of this. And so there's this new article out today about, well, it's actually a couple days old, but it's now kind of making the rounds today, about Pope Benedict calling for the Catholic Church to turn in all of their resources by October 1st. Now, why the deadline of October 1st? I don't know. I have no idea. But don't you think that's a little odd? Why did he sign an executive order in March calling for a digital dollar? And why is he apparently moving fast on this? Does it have anything to do also then with Pope Francis talking about the Catholic Church turning in their information, their money by October 1st? Now, I wrote a book several years ago, many of you don't even know about, called The Coming Religious Reich. Reich means empire or kingdom. It was over 500 pages. In June 2009, this is what I write. In June 2009, Pope Benedict issued a 30,000-word encyclical calling for reform of the United Nations so there could be true world political authority. He also called for a global tax to provide redistribution of wealth from rich countries to poor countries and a worldwide redistribution of energy resources to countries lacking those resources so they can have them, so they can get access to it. What he's really pushing here is Agenda 21, Agenda 2030. But more than that. That's sustainable development, no doubt about it. And then in another report that I talked about back in 2011, in October of 2011, the Vatican put out an 18-page report calling for a world central bank. And they used the words in that report in 2011. They were calling in that 18-page report for a world central bank, and they used the word common good 22 times. How do I know? Because I counted every time they used the word common good. Common good is another word for communitarianism, communism light, collectivism, the common good, collectivism. Now, what's very interesting is people talk about the Vatican and its wealth. Do you know how wealthy the Vatican is? The Vatican is so wealthy that I have in this book a report that says that the wealth of the Vatican is so great that they could not even calculate it if they wanted to. Even if they wanted to, they could not fully calculate the wealth of the Catholic Church because they have so much money. We're talking the first or second, it's been reported that they are the first or second largest owner of land in the world. The first or second largest owner of land in the world. Then you're talking about all kinds of artifacts, paintings that are frankly priceless. How do you put a price on some of them, right? Now, I just told you about that, about Benedict and Pope Francis, because Pope Benedict puts out this encyclical. Pope Francis turns around and quotes from it. So they're both on the record wanting world government, a world central bank. Now ABC News is reporting, other outlets, the Pope is wanting the Catholic subsidiaries to turn over their finances to the Vatican by October 1st. I deal with that again in my book, The Coming Religious Reich, on page 180. But I go into even greater detail on the Pope's encyclical, Pope Benedict's encyclical. He says the current crisis presents us with choices that cannot be postponed concerning nothing less than the destiny of man. The different aspects of the crisis, its solutions, and any new development that the future may bring are increasingly interconnected. They imply one another. They require new efforts of holistic understanding and a new humanistic synthesis. That's the Hegelian dialectic, folks. Merging of things together, which is not shocking because you have a Pope Francis who is a Jesuit, and the Hegelian dialectic process, that is a big part of the Jesuit order, has been for centuries and centuries. The current crisis, then, in the encyclical by Pope Benedict years ago, the current crisis obliges us to replan our journey, to set ourselves new rules and discover new forms of commitment, to build on positive experiences and to reject negative ones, to manage the global economy. To manage the global economy, to bring about integral and timely disarmament, food security, and peace. Now, let me ask you something. Back in 2011, how many of us were thinking about food security? Not many of us. Not many of us. There's a lot of food on a global scale. And in fact, many of the nations that don't have food, a lot of that is due to their world view. Whether we're talking India not wanting to kill the rats that eat the grain that they need to feed the cattle. Whether we're talking, again, other nations, not all nations, but there are many situations where the reason that there are people that are hungry and starving, it's a worldview issue in many, many cases. The leaders are tyrants. The leaders are dictators. They starve their people. It's not that we have a global food crisis, certainly not then. So why was Pope Benedict back in around 2011 talking about the need to manage the global economy and food security? 1974, the Kissinger report. What did Henry Kissinger call for? He called for using food to control countries. He called, in the Kissinger report, it was declassified in 1989 by the Reagan administration. Henry Kissinger, during the Nixon administration, was calling for using food to convince countries around the world to be involved in abortion on demand, population control. They want to decrease the world's population, and they didn't want it to go over 8 billion. We're at about 8 billion right now. I believe a lot of what we're seeing is not only based on their greed, their lust for power, control, money, but a lot of what we're seeing is also based on occultism. Occultism. This idea that we're damaging Mother Earth, that humans are a blight. It's the same worldview of Adolf Hitler that said that nature was to be served by man versus nature serving man. Nature was above man. The matter preceded the mind. Evolutionary, Darwinian evolutionary thinking. The matter preceded the mind. The earth was before man. Man came out of the earth, they teach. Earth is superior, nature is superior. Nature is to be served by man, not man to be served by nature. Man was a blight. Humans are a blight. This is what they teach. This is what Hitler believed. This is what your modern-day Nazism, your modern-day pantheism. There's too many people on the planet. We already got the Havari saying this from the World Economic Forum. There's too many people. And here was the 74 report by Kissinger saying we need to have population control. And he even predicted in his report in 74 we were going to have food crisis. We were going to have a fertilizer crisis, a fertilizer shortage. Now, how did they know that in 1974? But then they called on the UN to help with this population control, the UN to help with the food crisis, the UN to help with the food riots. They said there would be fertilizer shortages. They needed to have forced sterilization, abortion on demand, and then they could use food to control the world. The Vatican Bank currently has 5.1 billion euros in assets under management and reported 18 million euros in profits last year. The bank has previously donated 50 million euros a year of its profits to the people to pay for the Vatican bureaucracy, but profits have fallen in recent years. So I don't know what's going on. No idea what's going on here. But I find the timing very odd. Now, we know that here's a report, January 2022 of this year, money and payments, the U.S. dollar in the age of digital transformation. This is from the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System, okay? And we've gone over this, with screenshots and everything. And they're openly talking about flipping to a digital currency. Then, of course, we have the report by the Rockefeller Foundation. This report dated July 28th, 2020, that we've been talking to you about now for over 2 years. Over 2 years. Reset the table, meeting the moment to transform the U.S. food system. Nationalizing food. Well, isn't that interesting? Kissinger report in 74 was predicting a global food crisis, food riots, fertilizer shortages. We know more about what the Vatican wants. And one of the things that they want is not only globalism, but they want a world religion. And we have talked before about the fact that Pope Francis has a so-called scientist that has written many of his encyclicals. And what is he committed to? Gaia Earth worship. Gaia Earth worship. So are you guys noticing the merging of worldviews here? The merging of worldviews? Indeed, it's happening, and it's happening very quickly. Now, there are so many things happening at so many different levels that maybe we don't think they're connected. But I think many of these things are connected. Now, we not only have the Vatican, Pope Francis, calling for New World Order, World Central Bank, unconventional warfare. Unconventional warfare. This is a document that's been updated numerous times, originally written sometime, if I remember correctly, back in the 1960s, and they've updated it along the way. And in this document, Unconventional Warfare, this, by the way, this is when our government used to actually do work and explain how a communist revolution could take place in America and how to fight it off. Originally, as I said, this report came out in the 60s, and they kept updating it. But it was all about how the communists looked to subvert America, penetrate America. You know what's so ironic? The very things that the good government, the real government, the legitimate government used to warn about is the very thing now the bad government, the unconstitutional government, the government that has been captured is actually doing. I want to say that again. There was a day and time in which our government, which was not perfect and is not perfect, has never been perfect because it's run by people that have what? A sin nature. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, right? America's not perfect. We know that. But there was a time when Republicans or Democrats, many of them agreed on a few basic things: freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the right to assemble, private property, the external threats, the internal threats. In fact, there's a day and time in this country when some of the greatest patriots and the strongest anti-communists were Democrats. You can go back through history and find staunch patriots, men that had served in the military, then went into public life, and were staunch anti-communist, staunch patriots. And Republicans and Democrats agreed on certain core principles about America and the threats and the preparation needed. When we had good government, constitutional government, our governments warned about the very kind of government we have today. They even told us in many of their documents how the subversives would gain a foothold. And it was a pyramid. And in the pyramid, they laid out what would have to happen, numerous steps for there to be an overthrow of the U.S. government. Sabotage and terror to demonstrate weakness of government, increased underground activities to demonstrate strength of revolutionary organizations, intense sapping of morals, of morale of government, intense sapping of morale of government, administration, police, and military. Has that happened today? See it. You know what else? Many of the people who are in the military, even right now, who have been trained to recognize psychological operations, trained to recognize brainwashing, many of them do not see it. One of my friends, as I've told you, retired in October of last year. Had 600 intelligence officers answering to him. He had the corner office, worked in a literal skiff, a secure building with secure communications. He was overseas in a certain nation for his last assignment before retiring. Some of them were in his own department, working in the same room overseas, were excited about a Biden administration. They were excited about a Biden administration. They're all for being tolerant of the LGBTQ agenda. And my friend said, you have been trained, just like I was trained, to recognize psychological operations and brainwashing, disinformation, subversion. You recognize it when you hear it coming from other nations, but you do not recognize it when you hear it coming from your own nation. They can recognize the psychological operation and brainwashing from another country, but not their own government. And yet, here's this document I've shared with you, Unconventional Warfare, put out by our own government, warning about the steps necessary to overthrow America. And guess what? We're in the last three. We're about the last three steps listed in this pyramid of about 16 steps to overthrow the government. Now, we know that a lot of this is being done, as I started out the program with, on an orchestrated scale by the globalist to bring down America. What I want to know is what is coming, because I start connecting the puzzle pieces, and I've already been doing it here with you so far today. But we now have a manufactured food crisis. We have the stupidity of these new green deals that will not work, that will fail. Everything that will destroy agriculture. We're destroying fossil fuels. Things related to petroleum and agriculture, not only the diesel for the trucks or the tractors, the petroleum products needed for fertilizers. We're creating a supply chain crisis. We're making a manufactured food crisis, which again, ironically, here's the July 28th, 2020 report by the Rockefeller, reset the table, nationalizing the food industry. Here's the 1974 report by Henry Kissinger talking about what? Food shortages, fertilizer shortages, food riots. The globalists have been at this a long time, folks. This is all being done on purpose. Every bit of this is manufactured. And by the way, guess who's helping to push this green agenda and making a lot of money off of it and the manufacturing parts and things? China. And what does China want? Well, we know from their document, Unrestricted Warfare, they want to bring down America. And now we have subversives inside the country helping do it. We have Pope Benedict, Pope Francis on the outside, along with other religious world leaders calling for the destruction of America, redistribution of wealth. But how many Americans see what we're talking about? The question is, what do they need to do to stop the American people showing up in mass in November and voting for people who will respect the Constitution and the rule of law? And if they all wait to the last day, the election day, to vote, like they did in Arizona for Kerry Lake, what is coming for these people? And what do they have planned so they don't have to let go of the reins of power and possibly have the government be cleaned out, and then start prosecuting them? Why is New York City running PSAs about nuclear attack? What is going on with all the dots we've been connecting? Peace with U.S. only possible after New World Order. This is what a Putin ally said, and I reported this to you back in January of this year. Peace with U.S. only possible after New World Order. It's a Putin ally. Remember Obama telling Medvedev, the then president of Russia, to tell Putin, I'll have more flexibility after I'm elected? Folks, this is all being orchestrated. Don't you think the invasion of Ukraine by Russia and all that's going on, and by the way, here's another piece of the puzzle, us shipping all of this military equipment to Ukraine to our detriment, to our national security detriment. So they're purging the military. They're cleaning out the military. So we're cleaning out the military of the kind of people we need, people that question authority, unconstitutional authority, who have courage of their convictions. Those are the kind of people you want in the military. They're cleaning them out. They've labeled us outside the military, who are constitutionalists, who love the law, who are not for lawlessness, who are not for violence, who want to live peaceably. They characterize us, just our speech, as being domestic terrorism. Just our speech. And our speech is in accord not only with a Christian worldview, our speech is in accord with the Constitution. So they're going after our military. They're going after the citizens. They're shipping our weaponry overseas in order to deplete our readiness. They're destroying our food supply. They're destroying our economics by giving away, they're going to try to push, forgiving student loan debt. They're going to create massive inflation. They're doing everything they can to destroy the country for their globalist utopia. I don't know what they got planned for this fall, but I do know they cannot allow real constitutional, law-abiding, freedom-loving Americans, border security people, to get control of the reins of government, because if they do, there will be a price to pay. There'll be a price to pay. So I don't know what they have planned. But I can certainly look at the calls for possible nuclear attacks in New York, the calls for a digital currency, and say, these people are planning something. Now, why Jim Rickards is calling and saying that there's going to be a digital dollar that we roll to by December, and he gives the date, I don't know. But something's in the wind. What